And we're back. It's time for the RotoWire Rundown, the FedEx Cup Playoffs edition of the RotoWire Rundown. I am, of course, Keith Stewart from Read the Line, and I am joined by the one, the only, the award-winning scribe from RotoWire, lead golf analyst, Mr. Len Hochberg. Len, the Olympics are officially behind us. Any truth to the rumor that you were going to be a substitute for Tom Cruise in the closing ceremonies?
Oh my gosh, that would have been fun just to get a trip to Paris. I actually like that. Some people, it's always going to be hard to believe there was an alternate opinion on Twitter criticizing the festivities, but I got a kick out of it and got to see my mayor, Karen Bass, there, and the world will be coming here. And hopefully they don't come this time of year because we've got like 100 degrees today, but I digress.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm in Memphis, and it's 100 degrees here too. So I've gone inside, not my usual outdoor spot at the flash interview area, but I'm hiding inside in the air conditioning because it's a balmy, like 91 degrees already at 10:15 in the morning. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about this playoff format. If you would, for a second, break it down for us. We have 3 stages. There's some numbers. There's some points involved. For the folks that maybe aren't up to speed or are just tuning in for the first time, give us a quick breakdown of what we need to expect from the FedEx Cup playoffs over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, this is just the second year of this format with 3 playoff events. The top 70 players have gotten into the playoffs. Should I even venture into the top 25? It used to be the top 125 would get into the playoffs and they would all have their tour cards for next year. That is still being played out through the fall for the top 125 and tour cards. But the top 70 do have their cards for next season automatically. They're in this first playoff event, the FedEx St. Jude Championship, where you are in Memphis. This is a no-cut event. It's about time we had one of those. And they are playing to get into the top 50 so they can play next week at the BMW outside Denver, I believe, this year. Gosh, I loved it when it was in the Chicago area every year. And so the playoffs are 3 weeks, and we have 70 now. We go to 50 next week. We cut to 30 for the Tour Championship, as always, at East Lake. And, for the really top guys, nothing short of East Lake will be a success. But for a large number of these guys, the rank and file, the secondary players, this next cut from 70 to 50 is really the big one. I mean, not only does it show them they've taken the next step in their careers by being one of the 50 best players on tour, but this ensures that they all get into all the signature events next year. The 8 big money events with guaranteed FedEx Cup points for most of those signature events, no cut events. And it's just a sort of a self-perpetuating thing where the rich can get richer and have a leg up on staying in the top 50. We know there is churn, but for most of these guys, getting into the top 50 is enormous.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's why you're the best partner in the business. A beautiful transition to my first question for you today, which is in that 70 to 50 point range, those 20 guys there that are all fighting. And I think that they're going to go into TPC Southwind this week, and those guys are going to just be firing at pins, because if you don't improve, you just go home anyway. They really have nothing to lose. They have their tour cards secured for next year. So I think that those guys are going to play real aggressively. Is there anyone in that range, in the 60s or the 50s, that catch your eye that you think could bump up and gain that super signature status next year for 2025?
The first thing is that every year I marvel that you would think that there would be the opportunity for a lot of turnover. And I guess there is, and certainly with the points quadrupled for the playoffs. But traditionally, there hasn't been. And last year, only 2 golfers moved into the top 50 at the FedEx, and 2 guys fell out. And Hideki Matsuyama moved in. He tied for 16th. But Cam Davis needed a tie for 6th to move into the top 50. And the 2 guys who fell out were hard luck Nick Hardy and Mackenzie Hughes. So we won't see a lot of volatility there. I'll tell you two guys in the 50 to 70 range who will not be making the jump, and that's Victor Hovland and Jordan Spieth. They're the two big names in that, that final 20 there. Hovland is 57th, probably needs a top 10, maybe a little bit more. And Spieth at 63rd probably needs a top 5, maybe a little more. The tour has not released that information yet, but I don't think those guys are advancing. And Victor Hovland, won the next two playoff events last year, the BMW and the Tour Championship, and is the defending FedEx Cup champion. So this is a big deal. I don't see a lot of opportunity to move in. I'm sort of looking at number 56, Ben Griffin, who's playing well. He would need a good week, of course, and Eric Monroyan at 58, but they're going to need really good weeks. I mean, obviously the answer, who has the best chance? Number 51, Harris English. And he finished second at this tournament in 2020 when it was a WGC behind Justin Thomas. But he has not had many good results here other than that.
Well, you mentioned one of the bubble boys there, and that's Harris English at 51. How about Jake Knapp at 50? How about the target on your back if you're Will Zalatoris at 49? Now, there was two guys that I thought of in the low fit or the mid 50s that I thought that have a chance in order to do it this week, and it's based upon their recent form. The first one was Ben Griffin. He was T7 last week at the Wyndham, and he's a little bit of a Bermuda specialist. He came in runner-up at the Sanderson. That's not far from here. So he's good at putting on Bermuda greens, and he's also good from playing, in and around Bermuda grass rough. Great approach player. The other guy also finished T7, and he had one heck of a weekend there at the Wyndham. And that is Eric Cole. Eric Cole sits at 54th on the points list. And he's one of those guys that when he gets it going, tends to rattle off some top 10s and some top 5s. And sitting there at 54 on the points list, I feel like if he can get himself inside, inside the top 10 this week, like he did last week at Wyndham, then he'll move on and he'll gain signature status for himself for 2025.
Yeah, well, obviously I agree with Ben Griffin, and I did have, when I was looking at my notes before we came on, and I did consider Eric Cole, and I do think, we look at Nick Taylor at 52. He just has not been playing well for a long stretch of time. No one is really thinking that he will be able to make the jump. Patrick Rogers at 53. It would be pretty incredible story because Patrick Rogers made the top 50 last year. If he could make the top 50 2 years in a row, this guy is really been, in the shadows of the golf world on the PGA Tour when he was supposed to come out of Stanford and be amazing, and he still hasn't won. But so if he could make the jump, and obviously better chances than all but English and Taylor.
For sure. It's funny, Patrick Rogers, just real quick, he almost just never has lived up to his own collegiate, record. Beating Tiger's record at Stanford is a pretty big deal. He and Mav McNeely are two guys that I'm really surprised at this point in their careers they haven't won, but they're both in the playoffs this week, and we'll see what they have in store for TPC Southwind. Now, the golf course itself, a par 70, you got to love those, 7,243 yards. We've seen this golf course over the years, 1989 it started as the St. Jude, switched over in 2019 to a WGC event. Then in 2022, it became a playoff event. The first one was Will Zalatoris won over Sepp Straka in a playoff. Last year we had Lucas Glover in a playoff over Patrick Cantlay. What do you think you need to do to get in another playoff, or maybe just win this thing outright here down in Memphis?
Well, what do Will Zalatoris and Lucas Glover have in common? Neither one is a great putter, although Lucas Glover did find, religion or something for a 2-week span last year at this time, or, became Brad Faxon in disguise. You don't have to be a great putter. The winning score both last few years, 3 years, 15 or 16 under. It's not a birdie fest. This is a fairly long for a par 70 in the mid 7,200 yard range. Very narrow fairways. That's the first thing. You got to get the ball in the fairway. Now, they also do a good job of blunting distance. There are 11 dog legs. So you don't necessarily have to be a long hitter. In fact, I favor accuracy over length this week. Lucas Glover's certainly not a long hitter. Will Zalatoris is. There is water on 11 holes. There will be a lot of water balls, a lot of chance for danger here. There are more water balls here over the past 2 decades than anywhere else. Now, that's a bit of a slanted comment because there's more water here than at Sawgrass and things like that. I think TPC Twin Cities eventually will overtake Southwind for the most water balls, but get the ball in the fairway, avoid the water. Interestingly enough, that with the long second shot that the golfers will have, they're going to small greens. They're about 4,300 square feet on average. We usually see larger greens when golfers are asked to take longer approach shots. So that's one of the difficulties here as well. Greens will be missed. We'll have some scrambling coming into play. It really is a good test of everything a golfer needs to do, except maybe putting, but no one's ever complained if you putt well.
You know what? I won't contradict that it's a good test. I think it's just a little bit too much vanilla. And everything that you said, I'll just back up, and I don't want to be redundant. But yeah, there's treachery off the tee. You got to get the ball in play. Certainly, we're favoring accuracy over length. And then when it comes to approach, you talk about some of those long approaches, but 2/3 of the approach shots are coming from 125 to 200 yards. For these guys, that's a wedge, a 9-iron, 8-iron, maybe a 7-iron. So rather than TPC Southwind, I almost think of this as like TPC Graceland. It's like a tourist trap, like if you just stay out of the souvenir shop and you don't get caught up in any of the penalty areas, you put the ball in play and you're a great approach player, then you're going to do very well here. And it's definitely a team no putt event, because when you think about it, over the years, the guys that have won here, Zalatoris, of course, Lucas Glover, DJ back in the day, Daniel Berger, none of these guys were ever guys that were known to just fill up the cup throughout the course of their career. So, overall, I think that it is a ball striking test. Is it the toughest on tour? Definitely not. But at the same time, I think it's a good enough test to get from 70 to 50. And in some ways, I'm looking forward a little bit to, Castle Pines next week for a little bit different, something a little bit different. Maybe 8,000 yards might be a bit much, but something a little bit different. But this, for me, is kind of like TPC vanilla at the end of the day.
Fair point. Yeah, it's going back to when it was a regular tour event. It was never the exciting golf, and there aren't very memorable moments from there that at least for me. But yeah, difficult, but meh.
Yeah, and it's the only thing I can say in its defense. It spent so many years the week before the U.S. Open. And I'm sure the strength of field suffered due to that. But, overall, hey, the tour did their job. All 70 are here, ready to compete. We're ready for 3 weeks. These guys need to get after it, just like what happened last week. Players get eliminated on Sunday or Monday if you're Matt Kuchar. And that's going to happen again for the next couple Sundays, which is exciting. And that being said, with all 70 here, who's leading the list. So let's get down to the DFS names. In 10K land, we're talking always about Scotty Scheffler at the top of the board. Now, here's an interesting thing. At TPC Southwind, he's been here 6 times. He doesn't have any top 10s. Can we fade Scotty this week, or are we worried about what we saw at the Olympics?
Every week it's the first question, what to do with Scheffler and Schauffele. I think they're both 1 and 1A, and they have to be considered no matter what. And, this puts such a premium on accuracy and such a premium on greens and regulation. And there's no one better at it than Scheffler, that I do like him. And Xander Schauffele, to dismiss him is at your own peril. But he's played here 7 times as a regular tour event in a weak field, in a WGC and in the playoffs. And he's never finished in the top 15. So this might be one of his weakest places. And we know that the later in the playoffs are one of his strongest places. So
Yeah.
I am leaning toward Scheffler this week. He is one of my 2 picks in the 5 figures. To call him a 10K is well, he's 12.4, so he's 25%, 24% more than that. So I do favor Scheffler over Schauffele this week. And the other guy I like in the 10, I'm going to just have a lot of accuracy guys off the tee. No, wild things here for me. Colin Morikawa, just a really good fit. His approach numbers are still not great, but he's been so strong off the tee and so strong around the green. And his putting is, not terrible, just sort of mediocre terrible. So I do like his chances as well in the 10s.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting when they just snuck Morikawa up there to the flat 10,000, just kind of like when the pricing comes out on a Monday, everybody was looking for Colin, everybody wanted Colin, and then it was like, oh, they just stuck it to you, right? So, all right, so now we're going to skip down to the 9s. So much talk about Russell Henley. And I get it. But in 6 trips, he's had 3 missed cuts here. Are you buying into all the Henley talk? Or, I mean, is Russell Henley the guy this week that can actually win here? Or is he just a good DFS play? What are you doing with him, and what are you doing in the 9K range?
Yeah, Russell Henley is, you look at him every week, and of course that accuracy is paramount. And you look at him and you go, he's obvious. But really, what has Russell Henley done this season? We look back at this season, what's he done? He hasn't won, and where has he contended? And there's no memorable Russell Henley. He just seems to, I don't know, he seems to have sort of not playing as well as his stats. Now, for DFS, that might not be a bad thing. You just want the birdies and the numbers and the points, the DFS points to roll up, but he's not on my list. Corey Connors, on the other hand, is just made for this course, where you have to do everything great except putt, where you can get by with mediocre putting. And as we talked last week or a couple of weeks ago, his putting is vastly improved over the course of this season. He's had 2 top 10s in this tournament before, or at this course before. I got to watch the way we phrase all this stuff. And Tommy Fleetwood, I like in the 9,000 as well. Again, accurate off the tee, very good wedge player around the green. His approach numbers are not great, but getting better. But Connors is my favorite play in the 9s.
Down in the 8s, when it comes to Bermuda grass, everybody loves to talk about Sam Bermuda Burns. Are you talking about him this week?
I'm only going to pick 2 guys in each price range. There's only 70 guys in this field. I want to give people an option, but I can't just pick everybody. And he's not one of my 2 favorite plays. Tony Finau and Sung Jae Im. I mean, they are both playing very well over the last few months, and they both played very well here. I don't know what more you need to do. We can analyze and dissect and look at strokes gained, whatever, but they're playing well, and they play well here all the time or very often. So it's best not to overthink it.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Sung Jae Im, last week he was the betting favorite at plus 1,600, plus 1,500, depending on when you wanted to bet him on the board, and now he's triple that value, and he's the same player on Bermuda grass. Granted, yeah, Scotty and Xander are here, and that's why the difference in his price, but Sung Jae for sure, and I love the Finau pick as well. Down in 7,000 land, we're just a couple years removed from Will Zalatoris winning here, and now he's 7K, right?
Yeah,
Is there value there, or are you looking for somebody else in the 7,000s?
He's another guy, not sort of like Russell Henley. Like, what's he done this year? I mean, he's 49th, which is not bad coming off of back surgery. I guess he was second at the Genesis. I think I read that. I hope I can't just speak off the cuff here. It's just you and me here, right? Nobody else listening in.
No, nobody else.
Yeah. Okay. But
nobody critical.
Yeah. So yeah, he's got but again, this is a good course for him. You don't have to putt, and or you can at least stay inside the top 50 without having a good putting week. Adam Scott, who missed the playoffs last year for the first time, he had made the first 16 years. And Matt Kuchar famously just became the final guy to not make every playoff season, 17 in a row for him. He missed this year. Adam Scott bowed out last year, but Adam Scott is back this year. And interestingly enough, Adam Scott in his last 6 trips to Southwind has finished 5th 3 times. He hasn't had great weeks the other times, but when you do something 3 times out of 6 and finish fifth, so he, clearly is very good at getting the ball in the fairway and playing kind of vanilla golf, which is, to use your term, and well, that's what you need to do here. So
Yeah.
I do like him. And Sepp Straka, maybe the straightest driver of the golf ball on the entire tour, certainly in the top 2 or 3, and was a playoff loser here 2 years ago to Will Zalatoris. So he has shown that he can play well here. And when you hit the ball as straight as him, it's not a surprise that he was in the position he was in.
Yeah, if you're launching the ball on approach off these Zoysia fairways, I mean, you are all set. I mean, it is like a carpet. It is so beautiful out there. Golf course is in fantastic shape. Now, speaking of the 6K land, we got to go there last, right? Max Grazerman. Whoa, what heartache, And I remember Max when he was 19 years old and he won the 2014 New Jersey State Open. I mean, the kid was a star. He went to Duke. And he's actually living up to expectations, which is very tough to do when you're that good at such a young age. But he's out here on tour. He's contending. He played well at the 3M. He played well at the Wyndham. Would you back him again to play well after what happened on Sunday? Or do you think that's more motivation?
No, I could very well see him playing well. I thought he was very composed in all that was going on around him. It was so hectic, and I don't even think that we got the feel on TV that it was like dark.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to do all these things, and you have your senses about you, and you're trying to keep your wits and stuff. And one of your senses is your eyes, and it just became so difficult, I think, for these golfers to navigate things. So I think, and he just got a terrible bounce. That I've never seen a ball bounce off a cart path that far, that high. Maybe I haven't been around a lot of, I usually hit it to beyond the cart path, so I don't see my ball bounce on the cart path. But I thought he was very composed. And I do think he can play decently enough this week and stay inside the top 50. I think he's 47th. I like Cam Davis. I don't think that's anything surprising. He's played better here 3 years in a row, 6th last year. He doesn't appear to be the greatest fit for this course, but when a guy gets better here 3 years in a row in a WGC in the playoffs, and there's tough competition every time, and he won't have the pressure of having to get a top 6 to advance this year. He's number 44. He's pretty comfortable. He's almost certainly into next week, so he'll be able to play a little bit freer. Maybe that's a bad thing. I don't know. And getting down lower, Jonathan Vegas. It was hard to find somebody down there. He's at 6,500. He is so strong off the tee, accurate driver, approach shots, everything. He's just so terrible with his wedge and with his putter. But he, just a couple of.
The guy won 3 weeks ago. Cut him some slack.
Right. But the numbers with those two clubs are atrocious. But he can maybe avoid the wedge. He's so good, from the fairway. I mean, I'm talking about around the green, not necessarily a wedge from 110, 120, something like that. I mean, get, approach shots. But he is so good and so strong. I mean, he's, not Scotty Scheffler level, but he's in, top 15 in a lot of these stats. So across the board, and like second or third in greens and regulation, something like that. So just to move up from his 60, being priced at 6,500, and to get value for that number, I think he's a good play.
All right. Well, to shift gears for a second over to the betting board, I've got a couple names for you to react to. Let me get through them here. The first one is that as hot as it is here, I'm going to depend on the Iceman. Patrick Cantlay at plus 2,500. I feel like there is a bit of value there. There's, they keep pushing the lower part of this board down. We've got 3 guys in the single digits. You've got Colin Morikawa. He's pushing like 11, 12, to 1. I mean, which seems like a very low number for him. I know he's played very well, but he hasn't been winning. Ludwig is still down there, but Patrick Cantlay sits there in the mid-2s. And you know what? He gained 6 strokes on approach at Royal Troon. He's been hitting his irons really, really well lately. He's been gaining with the putter as well. And this guy's been a playoff performer over the years. He loves this place, but he's had 3 playoff wins. He lost here last year in a playoff to Lucas Glover. He's very good on this golf course. He's good on Bermuda grass. He definitely knows how to play positional golf, vanilla. If anybody plays vanilla golf, right? I know you'd agree with me there, right? I
Two
mean, this guy.
scoops for Patrick Cantlay on that vanilla.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. No sprinkles, nothing. Just straight cup, no wait. Not even the wafer cone is way too wild for him, right? I mean, so it wouldn't surprise me at all with the way that he's been playing lately that he comes in here and just does his thing and just plods along. And after 72 holes, he's very much in the mix. And then the second guy is a bit of course history. And like you said with Adam Scott, I think there's a bit of pride and motivation here as well. I mean, he doesn't need to move up the board at all. He's well positioned inside the top 30. And that is a guy that's from Kentucky, and that's Justin Thomas. Now, I wrote about him yesterday because when he dropped on the odds board, he was 50-1. He was plus 5,000, right? Some odds makers already have him down to 40. They already have him down to plus 4,000, right? I mean, you just see that and you go, this guy won here in 2020. He is great off Zoysia grass fairways. Why? Because he grew up in this region. He's good on Bermuda grass. He's a proven winner, two-time major champion. I mean, I think that Justin Thomas, when you look at those guys that are in that range, like a Russell Henley, like a Sung J M, I mean, they're all sitting there in the 40s, like a Billy Horschel. Like, you have to start to say to yourself, who could stare down Xander or Scotty or Rory on a Sunday? Because essentially one of those three are going to be there, if not all three of them, right? So who could stare those guys down and win? And who's done it in the past? Who could recall on those memories and get it done and has a great course history? So I like Cantlay and I like Thomas this week. I think they both represent some value and tremendous upside. You with me? You want to back those? You want to tail one, maybe fade one? What do you think?
No, I could see both of them performing well this week. I don't think they are front and center and the first guys that came to my mind, but they both played well here before, and they're both world-class players. And you're right about the point about staring down these other big names. It's going to be different. Even Grazerman. I mean, he wasn't staring down world-class players, but he was in a big time moment. He was in a big time moment, and maybe he wasn't quite ready for it. So now, on top of that, throw in that you're in the playoffs and you're looking at Xander or Schauffele or Scheffler or McIlroy, and you've got to do that as well. So yeah, those two guys can do it. And I did really consider Thomas. He's had a lot of good weeks this week and a lot of really bad weeks. A lot of good and bad. He hasn't been vanilla. He's been rocky road. Sorry.
Yeah, no. But hey, when he's in a place that he's comfortable, he's been good. When he's in a place that he's uncomfortable, it shows. And I get that. But the upside of getting him on Monday at 50-1 to me far outweighed. I mean, I just look at all the guys in that range and I go, man, like, who could really go walk the line with Scotty Scheffler? And, who has the mid-iron game off of Zoysia grass that can really get the job done? And that's why my head and my heart went there. And let's be honest. I mean, over the last 3 weeks, Len, read the line, we've been super hot. We had Johnny Vegas out there at the 3M. That was 80-1. And then on the same Sunday, I got Lauren Coughlin at 40-1 up in Canada for the LPGA. Well, fast forward to the next week, Andrea Lee, she held the 54-hole lead at the Portland Classic. She didn't pull through, and neither did John Rahm, who we had, of course, at the Olympics. But this weekend, Aaron Rai, plus 3,500, winner. I mean, I know it was a wild one, and we got lucky. But hey, you know what? You had to pick him to begin with. And the other one, which I think is one of the, and I want to get your opinion on this, and which is why I'm going down this little diatribe here, is that Lydia Ko, in 3 Olympic visits, right? So we had her last week, plus 3,300 to win gold. She wins gold, but forget the Hall of Fame. Forget that. Forget, 2 winners in the same weekend again. How about the fact that she goes to 3 Olympics and wins 3 medals? How cool is that clean sweep, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's very impressive. Obviously, no man did that. And it's a hard thing. I mean, not only is it 8 years apart, 9 years apart, something like that, that makes it just the time element to be at the top of your game for that long. So, and there's just, I think these golfers feel a different kind of pressure in the Olympics that, maybe only the Ryder Cup or Solheim Cup will, sort of mirror. So you have to be able to handle that. And she did. And just a wonderful champion.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the guys. There was only 4 guys that played in all 3. I mean, it just was a superb effort and so cool to see her get in the Hall of Fame. I cover the LPGA every week, so when they have a stellar story like that, I like to bring it up. But you know what? We'll be back next week, folks, for the BMW Championship. I'll be out in Colorado. Of course, Len will be right there in LA preparing for 2028, right? I know you're heartbroken that breakdancing won't be there. You had your cardboard out in the street. You were practicing, but Ray Gunn took down the breakdancing, and enough's been said about that. As far as I'm concerned, I can't thank you enough for being with me each week on the rundown. Any last thoughts for TPC Southwind?
Not for TPC Southwind, but I just want to a big shout out to Trace Crow, who backed me up last week, threw him in there. I don't think I had ever said those two words together in my entire life. Tied for 7th at the Wyndham, way down at low 6,000s or something. So a little pat on my own back there, but I did want to just get the opportunity to say the words Trace Crow again.
Oh, man. The world's my most favorite action hero on the PGA Tour, Trace Crow. Hey, you know what? Len knows what he's doing, folks. That's why the names are so important, especially down there in the value center of the 7s, the 6s, and the 5s when they happen. And they'll be back in the fall, those 5K names for sure. And we'll be with you every week as far as if the PGA Tour is playing, then Len and I are here on a Tuesday. So catch us on the rundown at 11:15 Eastern Time, 8:15 Pacific Time. I'm Keith Stewart from Read the Line. Of course, Len Hochberg from RotoWire. We'll see you next week.